You have a voice, use it. Generally, who really cares about what celebrities think? I think it's clear that they do have undeniable influence. Selena Gomez is the most followed person on Instagram in the world, but a few days ago, she posted this to her stories. This is wild because she has so many people who follow her, and yet she doesn't think that a post will change anything. The women that I used in the thumbnail for this video combined still do not have as many followers as Selena Gomez. Yet, has that stopped them from posting? No. You have a voice, use it. Powerlessness can be deliberately manufactured, either in ourselves, by those around us, like in the bystander effect, or on a wider scale in terms of the media, social media, the government, different influences in our lives. Wealthy, high-profile individuals or governments who wring their hands and say, there's nothing we can do, if only we could do something about climate change or about this issue, but there's nothing we can do. And because they are the government or this person who supposedly has lots of influence, we can then start to feel powerless because we're like, but they have all the money, power, influence, they have all of that. I don't have any of that. And yet they say they can't do anything. And so this powerlessness gets perpetuated. If you want to see how this apathy is deliberately manufactured, I would recommend you watch this video by James Rewald. Social psychological theory that individuals are much less likely to help someone who needs help if there are other people around. If we take a really benign example, let's say you see someone on the high street and they're carrying loads of stuff and they drop everything they're carrying. They're carrying like crates or like papers. Just imagine someone with a lot of stuff. It's going to take them a long time to pick all this stuff up. If you are the first one to witness that happening and you don't do anything, it makes it less likely that anyone who comes after you and sees what's happening and sees this person trying to pick up all their stuff, it makes it less likely that anyone else is going to step in. The bystander effect kicks in. People think, well, if they've not helped, they were here before me, so maybe this is under control and I don't need to do anything. There will always be people who do take action, who would help, and maybe you would be one of those people, but I don't think we can say definitively either way how we would act until we are ourselves in a situation like that. That is an interesting theory if we're talking about powerlessness and about feeling like we can't do anything. Along the same lines as the bystander effect is the smoke-filled room experiment. The smoke-filled room experiment is about the diffusion of responsibility. If an individual is alone when they discover an emergency, they think that they are responsible for it. So in the experiment, 75% of people, when they were in a room by themselves and the room started to fill up with smoke, 75% of people in the experiment left that smoke-filled room and reported it and was like, hey, the room is filling up with smoke. 75% of people who were alone in the room. However, if there were other people already in the room, from 75%, remember, if that person was alone, that number drops to 10% of people who would leave the room and report, oh my gosh, the room is filling up with smoke. If there were other people around in the room with them, the room would fill up with smoke, but they wouldn't say anything because they would think, maybe this is normal, maybe this is part of the experiment. We are social beings, we are social creatures, we take our cues from others. And so, if you are in an environment, whether that's physically with friends or family, what you consume online or the news that you consume, if you are in an environment where this narrative of powerlessness is being perpetuated, you might be inclined to agree with that and think, yeah, there is nothing I can do. It's easier to carry on in that feeling instead of fighting back. It's easier to go with the social norm, which brings us nicely onto denial. Denial keeps us comfortable. You may have experienced denial in really small ways, like telling yourself that you're going to go to the gym tomorrow, even if a small part of you knows that you're not going to do that, you're not going to start this new habit. We don't like to be wrong, so then we can just ignore that. You know, you might have downloaded like a fitness app to track your runs. When that doesn't work out, you're not going to really look at that failure, because if you've watched my channel before, I don't really like to talk about failure because I don't think it exists. I think we can learn from it. It's much better to take action and fail, and then you can have something to work with than to just sit in your like sphere of perfectionism, just waiting for the right time to do anything. That's a whole side rant about failure. Instead of confronting the fact that maybe we failed at something or we didn't do what we said we were going to do, it can be a lot easier to deny that thing. Cognitive dissonance comes in here as well. Cognitive dissonance is a mental conflict that happens when your beliefs don't line up with your actions. Denial comes in very nicely with this because you can then start to push things away. Where there is dissonance, where there is a clash between what you believe, what you say you believe, versus what you're doing, that's really uncomfortable. So denial then appears as a very helpful coping mechanism to help you deal with the discrepancy between your actions and your beliefs. And we can then come up with all kinds of excuses why we don't need to care about a particular issue or why we can't deal with something right now. Selena Gomez posted that story and then a couple days later posted one saying she was going to delete Instagram because she couldn't deal with everything. I think we can say that the way she handled this was at best tone deaf and very much centering her. The cognitive dissonance and the denial is kind of evident in her reaction there, where she's saying, I'm going to delete this app because I don't want to see either like the comments or messages that she's getting about her story post, things that other people are sharing, like we talked about Bella Hadid, Gigi Hadid, Angelina Jolie, and other Palestinian journalists who are sharing things about what's going on. And if people are then tagging Selena Gomez being like, you need to pay attention to this, I can get why she's like, no, I've had enough of this, but that is a choice, and we're going to talk about privilege a bit later. But denial is those things of like, it's not my problem, I can't deal with this, it's not happening to me, I can only deal with so much. These are all like rationalizations for us to cope with that cognitive dissonance and for us to alleviate that discomfort that comes with having a certain set of beliefs and yet not following up those beliefs with any kind of action, not taking action, aligning with the things that you profess to believe or the story that you tell yourself about the kind of person that you are. This leads us nicely onto discomfort. I've talked before on my channel about how it's important to sit with uncomfortable feelings and to get comfortable with discomfort. This is where real change can happen in yourself, and then as we're talking about, you have a voice, use it. You can then use the changes that you have undergone in yourself, use your influence, your impact on the world to help others, and use your voice. If you want to grow, if you want to heal, be curious, be a lifelong learner, always be seeking out new information, it's crucial for you to develop this skill of sitting with uncomfortable emotions. And it is a skill because, as we already talked about with cognitive dissonance, you're going to want to run away from facing the truth of your actions or your beliefs and how those things aren't aligned anymore. It's really uncomfortable to face who you really are, and I feel quite grateful to be in recovery and to be going through the process of this. Matthew Perry said in an interview about how when he would drink, reality moved to where it should be, and I really relate to that. If you're sober, then you're walking around and the world just feels off. It doesn't feel like how it should be. I have got used to sitting with uncomfortable feelings. I've got used to dealing with this uncomfortable reality. We can see it in the Instagram example. Selena Gomez is clearly not comfortable with being uncomfortable. Learning to manage discomfort is also really important because it helps you deal with anger. Anger is a horrible emotion to feel, but it's also really important because it's a guiding emotion. So if we think about righteous anger or righteous indignation, the fact that you're feeling angry about injustice, it shows that there is something wrong and that something needs to be done about that you need to take action, use your voice to do something about that. Ephesians 4 verse 26, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. This is biblical. Anger is important. John chapter 2 verses 13 to 17, Jesus walks into the temple and is angry that people are trading in the temple, and he overturns all of the tables in the temple. He's not passively saying, oh, what are you doing? Can we clean this up, please? He's literally overturning things and being like, get out of my father's house. Righteous anger is important and you're feeling it for a reason. That's why I started with the discomfort step, because anger is really uncomfortable, really horrible. Once you've mastered sitting with discomfort, it's then a lot easier to channel your anger into something productive. Dr. Maisha Cherry wrote a book called The Case for Rage, Why Anger is Essential to the Anti-Racist Struggle. And she talks about this concept of Lordian rage, which is in the vein of the black feminist poet and activist Audre Lorde, who you may have seen quotes from on Instagram or on Pinterest. Lorde wrote how anger is an appropriate reaction to racist attitudes and actions, and how anger can help promote honest communication in the fight against oppression. Anger is very important. It helps you to use your voice. Dr. Cherry in the book talks about using your anger in good faith, not virtue signaling, not scapegoating anyone. She talks about morally appropriate anger, which she talked about briefly in those biblical examples. Soraya Chemaly wrote the book Rage Becomes Her, The Power of Women's Anger, encouraging women to use their anger for positive change. Chemaly says that anger is a deeply rational response. It's a warning. Anger is the language of justice and fairness. We have been conditioned to believe that we don't have power as individuals. What does it matter? What can I do? I'm just one person. It won't make that much difference. And yes, to be fair to Selena Gomez, we don't know what she's doing. So yes, on her public platform, she's decided she's not going to leverage her audience, leverage the privilege and the power that she has with having 400 million people who know who she is and who kind of are interested in what she has to say. She's decided she doesn't want to use that public platform, but who knows? She could be donating loads of money, having difficult conversations with friends and family, which we're going to talk about. Don't look away. Don't use denial as a cop-out like we talked about. Don't fall back into complacency. Use this as an opportunity to take action, to educate yourself. So what can you do? I am all about the little things on this channel. The little things add up. That's kind of why I wanted to make this video. You have a voice. You may think that because you don't have a massive platform or because you don't have a huge group of friends, any kind of influence on social media, you may think that that means that people aren't interested in what you have to say. But if we're talking about the little things, it's in the conversations that you can have with people that you know and get them to maybe change their perspective on things. I will admit I'm not the best at this. I'm still learning how to be patient and gracious because it can be frustrating to have conversations about political issues if you're on different sides or if someone is consuming a lot of propaganda. And I'm thinking that I'm gonna do some videos talking about the active and passive voice and about the way that we consume media. Subscribe if you are interested in seeing that. I've been collecting like screenshots and articles to talk about. It's not always easy to talk to friends and family. Things can get quite heated. You probably will have had difficult family dinners or lunches or big occasions where things get brought up because these are important issues that we do need to talk about. I've had some eye-opening conversations with family recently. I will also say people's silence speaks volumes, which is why I think that it's interesting looking at different celebrities who are speaking up versus who aren't speaking up. You can think that, oh, I'm just going to stay out of it. I'm not going to say anything. I don't know enough. I'm not going to get involved. The answer to that is you can read loads. You can learn loads. We have the internet. It's amazing. But you need to speak up on certain issues. I can remember one particularly fraught time in 2016 where we had a big family occasion and one of my family members admitted they hadn't voted, and my great auntie, who I don't know if you can see in the background, I've got a photo with her. She was so upset that this female relative of mine hadn't voted because she was like, women died for your right to vote. You can be like, well, the ability to vote is what they died for. I don't have to. But it's like, if people gave their lives, the least you can do is maybe do some reading, try and form your own opinion. This links nicely to a quote by Desmond Tutu that I love. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you're neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. It's saying if you don't have an opinion on something, you're choosing the side of the oppressor. It's impossible to be neutral when it comes to injustice. And if you say that you want to look away, go deep in the denial, the cognitive dissonance means that you can't reconcile your actions with your beliefs. If you want to look away, you are being complicit. There's basically not an option to not be political in situations of injustice. Whether you want to pay attention or not, people are watching. It's the same thing as when people speak up, for example, during the Me Too movement, and people would say, I see when my male friends or my male family members make light of this or mock this or say they don't believe certain women. People are noticing what you're doing. Even if you think they aren't, you're not expressing anything, you're just not interested. That says something about you too. This is the harsh truth section. I hope that if you're with me this far, you're on board for the discussion, comfortable enough sitting with the discomfort of listening to the stuff I've been saying so far. The same way that we're watching these celebrities who've signed a petition, the same way that we're looking at these people, noticing whether they're saying something or not, people in your life are looking to you as well. For example, a few months ago when Barbie came out, it was a family thing. We were having lunch outside, beautiful sunny day, barbecue, family, different generations all together. And then the Barbie film was brought up because someone had just gone to see it. And a really interesting thing happened. A male relative of mine made their view very clear about misogyny and about how they think men and women are now equal and there's nothing to discuss here. I noticed how no one else was willing to jump in and say something. The only things that people were willing to do was jolly the conversation along. Let's talk about something else, which obviously eventually happened because, you know, you're not going to dwell on one thing. It was just funny how they were saying misogyny doesn't exist. Half an hour later, it's all of the women clearing up while the men sit outside relaxing. Just thought that was fun. It's important to speak up even if you think that you don't have a voice. And I'm telling you, you do. That's the point of this video. It's important to speak up because people are also observing your silence, working out where you stand on the issue. Even if you think you're neutral, we've already talked about how neutrality in situations of injustice is impossible. People are still noticing what you're doing. Maybe use this opportunity to start learning instead of just going along with the status quo, pushing back with the denial. Because it's easy, right? Life is busy. We have a lot going on. There are things that are much easier to think about or easier to deal with, things with easier solutions or actions that we can immediately take and see results. Oh, it's much better for me to go for a walk, or I can make something nice for dinner. I can clean up. Like, I don't want to have to be dealing with these complex things and do this reading and like face prejudices within myself or face the fact that I am sometimes prone to denial. Like, it's hard to look inward and see who you really are, but I think it's vitally important because once you do that, you can realize you have a voice and you can use it. In terms of like talking with your family and friends, you definitely won't reach everyone. I've said that I'm still learning how to do this without getting overwhelmed by the righteous anger. You won't reach everyone, but it's important to have these difficult conversations, or not even to go in like really aggressively, like, how can you stay silent? How can you think this? But to allow there to be space to talk about this and allow the conversation to be open for them to say what they think or what they've heard. And you can have then like a dialogue about it. It has to be a choice on someone's own behalf. Like, you're not going to reach someone and convince them of your viewpoint and help them to take action, which we're going to talk about what you can do. It's not going to happen unless they come to their own conclusion. It's meaningful on a small level to have these conversations. You don't have to have a big influence or a big following on social media or a big platform. You just need to be brave enough to have those small conversations and open the space for there to be disagreement. I'm working on a video at the moment about friendship, and one of my closest friends is someone who I know there is mutual respect in our friendship, and I can bring up if something is upsetting me or I'm dealing with something difficult, and I can bring it up, and I know this person, even if we might disagree on the topic or the resolution of it, I know that they respect me enough and love me enough to actually deal with that issue, and we can disagree on it and it will be okay. Not a lot of my friendships have that. Practical actions you can take. You have a voice, use it, but how? So obvious things are action, so living out your values. That's going to be both in the quiet moments with yourself where you sit with the uncomfortable feelings, you read up on stuff, you listen to things, you try and read between the lines, dismantle propaganda. And it's also going to be living out your values like we just talked about, with showing where you stand and not sitting on the fence, not both sidesing every issue, because there does not have to be both sides to every issue, particularly when we're talking about injustice. I think a lot about Karl Popper's tolerance paradox. If you want to live in a tolerant society, you have to be intolerant of intolerance. It's a paradox because you think, if I want to live in a tolerant society, I've got to tolerate everything. No, the paradox is you have to be intolerant of intolerance. So you would say that's an intolerant society then. But the thing is, if you let that intolerance go, you let those intolerant people have their view. If you go to the logical conclusion, then you end up with an intolerant society. The paradox, you've got to be intolerant of intolerance, which is why I think both sides is at best denial and being like unaware of the consequences, and at worst both sides is nefarious and very well aware of this tolerance idea, this tolerance paradox, and is trying to present itself as a legitimate alternative, both sidesing something when it's actually not a legitimate alternative, and it's just going to perpetuate more intolerance, more injustice. Live out your values in those conversations, in what you do. Donate money. Research this well. There are lots of resources online. I will also be leaving some links to different accounts and different information, articles, stuff we've referenced in this video already. I will be leaving that in the description, so check that out for more resources. Learn more, read. I will try and find a list of books educating yourself about propaganda, about becoming more media literate, especially in the digital age where things can be distributed so quickly and end up being wrong. For example, on Twitter the other day, after Matthew Perry died, I saw someone using a headline which was very sensational and really horrible. They were saying, oh my gosh, look at this newspaper, how dare they use this headline? And the headline was actually from like 2 years ago. But it fit with the context of Matthew Perry passing away. And I don't know if this person just shared it or if they deliberately, for engagement, seen that this headline fit with the death of Matthew Perry, even though it wasn't about that. There's stuff like that where we need to be very aware that social media, while it can be a great thing to get first-hand accounts of what's going on, it can also be very unreliable, and there are people out there, either unwittingly or very consciously, who are manipulating or distorting things. And something you can do is to try and educate yourself about being more media literate and thinking through sources. We talked about how you can feel powerless. Collective action is really powerful and can counter that feeling of powerlessness. So banding together with people who have similar views, who are all taking the same sort of action, whether that is protesting or boycotting certain companies, that is a really powerful thing you can do. And you can do that, particularly with boycotting, that's something you can do every day. Whereas, protesting, there might not be a protest every day. You might not have enough money to be able to donate a significant amount of money every day, but boycotting a specific product or a specific company, that is something that you can do every day. Sharing information online. Now you might say, I don't have a big social media following. You do have a voice. Even if it's just posting on your Instagram stories and you have like 10 people who follow you, you may reach one of those people, or you may make them think about something. You never know what impact you're going to have on someone else. So don't let yourself fall into it's not going to make any difference, because you don't know that. People talk about the ripple effect or the butterfly effect. One small ripple in the pond can have a massive impact. Don't sell yourself short. You have a voice, use it. And the other thing to think about when we're talking about, I only have a small following on social media, there's no point in me sharing any information. Governments have social media accounts. Public figures, journalists, these people have social media accounts. And yes, they're more well-known, obviously, but they have social media accounts for a reason. And that is because social media has influence. They are leveraging the power of social media. You can do the same in your own way. You can use your voice. This video is very different to any I've posted on my channel before. If you are still watching and you have watched my channel before, thank you. I would love to know what you think of this. Equally, if you are a new viewer, hello. Whatever you think of this video, please let me know in the comments. I have enjoyed talking about some different political and philosophical topics. I am going to do that propaganda series. I'm also going to carry on doing some of the normal content that I've been doing on my channel before. I just felt really compelled to make this kind of video because I've been dealing with this topic of you have a voice, use it. Have built up a little platform on YouTube. I can start an interesting conversation about this, or maybe prompt you to do some more thinking and reading of your own. That was my aim. You have a voice in whatever way that looks like for you. Posting on your Instagram stories, retweeting something on Twitter, having a conversation with your neighbor or a difficult conversation with a friend. You have more power than you realize. You have a voice. Use it.